Yeah, welcome back. In the last session, we had discussed about the lumbar kinematics. So today, I'm going to talk one of the important topic, that is lumbo-pelvic rhythm. So this is one of the important topic in biomechanics, where it can be asked as a 5-mark questions also. So it is suggesting that if a lumbar movement have to happen, so if you are bending forward, what happens is, along with the lumbar movement, anterior tilting of pelvis also occurs. It's like Caillet described a specific instance of coordinated simultaneous activity of lumbar flexion and the anterior tilting of the pelvis in sagittal plane during the trunk flexion and extension. Just see the image here. When a person is bending forward, you'll be getting a kyphotic arch over the lumbar area, and the hip or pelvis is tilting anteriorly. That hip will be tilting anteriorly. In the same way, for lumbar extension, the curve will go for lordotic curve, as well as the hip will have to come back and it have to go for posterior pelvic tilt. So the activity of bending over to touch one toes with knee straight depends on the lumbar pelvic rhythm. The first part of bending consists of lumbosacral exflexion followed by the anterior tilting of the pelvis at the hip joint. That's what I explained right now. A return to the erect posture, that is extension. For example, if you're bending like this, definitely here the hip, see, consider this as my hip. If we want to go in front, the hip had to tilt anteriorly, as well as the lumbar lordosis will go for change. The lordotic curve will be transferred into a kyphotic curve. For example, if you are arching over here, just arching and maintaining the lumbar lordosis, if you go and bend further, there will be a limitation. The muscle structures over the posterior part, that is hamstring and gluteus maximus, will get stretched out if you maintain a lordotic curve and if you start to bend, which means your arch should be maintained and you have to bend. At that time, the posterior structure will go for stretching, but in order to initiate the lumbar movement, the lordotic curve will be transferred into a mild kyphotic curve, then anterior tilting of the hip will occur. Same way for the vice versa. See, if I am bent forward, the anterior tilting will occur. After that, when you are coming for the extension, the hip have to go for the posterior pelvic tilting. Posterior pelvic tilt have to occur, and the curve will be lordotic. So the initial pelvic motion delays the lumbar extension until the trunk is raised far enough to shorten the momentum of the external load, thus reducing the load of erecta spinae. I can give you an example. If you are squatting, if you squat in a proper way, the body's alignment should be proper. I'll show you. So, sometimes if you squat, there are more chances the hip, that pelvis will tilt more anteriorly, so you will be squatting like this. Sometimes your knee can come forward beyond the first toe, or else your body can pass forward. The actual squatting is make an arch here. In this way, you have to squat. If your muscles and the soft tissues are elongated further, then only you will be able to do a perfect squatting. For that, lumbo-pelvic rhythm is one of the example. Like I am giving you an extra example. So now I will discuss about the kinetics. So compression is one of the quality or the kinetics happening inside the lumbar area. As I had explained, lumbar area is the area where the person have to put more load, or the person's load will be transferring to the lumbar area, then it will be transferred to both the lower limbs. So what happens is, when our weight is transferred through the lumbar area, the compression will be occurring. The compression occurs in the lumbar area, and this increased size of the lumbar vertebral body and the disc in comparison with their counterparts in the other region helps the lumbar structures support the additional weight. So that is one of the benefit of the increased size of the lumbar vertebrae that we had discussed in the slides that in the last session. The lumbar region must also withstand the tremendous compressive load produced by the muscle contraction. For example, in a physiotherapy point of view, if a person is getting a low back pain, there are more chances the muscles contraction will be more than the usual one. More specifically, I can tell the torque which produced by the erector spinae will be more over the lumbar area, because if the erector spinae is producing more torque over here, it will compress the lumbar area and more compression will be occurring over the disc. So what will happen if more compression occurs over the disc? That will come to in the next slides. So here it is showing the compressive load which is happening over the lumbar area. So if you are increasing the extension or lordosis, zygapophyseal facet or zygapophyseal joint, the more compressive load will be occurring. In the same way, if a degeneration of the intervertebral disc occurs, at the same time, the compressive load also get increased. So can you correlate with both the sentences? One is increased extension or lordosis, the zygapophyseal joint will assume more of the compressive load. At the same time, during the degeneration of intervertebral disc, zygapophyseal joint will assume increased compressive load, which means there is a relation. That is why most of the time, if a patient which is diagnosed as intervertebral disc pain, they will be having more chances, they will be following a pattern like they will be having extension pain more than flexion. I am not telling flexion pain won't occur, but there are more chances when your patient is trying for extension, the pain will be more than the flexion. Which means if the extension is painful, most of the time flexion will be relieving, which means the compressive load is occurring over the zygapophyseal joint when the patient tries to extend. So most of the time in the intervertebral disc, the compressive load will be more. Can you see here? If the compressive load is more of the disc, the disc can come out. So as I mentioned in the earlier classes, the spinal cord is passing through the vertebra. So what will happen? The disc will come out and there are more chances it can compress the spinal nerves. That's one reason why they are getting a radiating pain down to the lower limb. So this changes in the position also can change the location of body's line of gravity. That you will be learning in the posture, the chapter posture. So next I am going to talk about the shear force. It is like a force which occur in the anterior part of the vertebra. Which lumbar segments are subject to the anterior shear forces caused by the lordotic posture. See, due to the lordotic posture, the disc will be coming anteriorly, and the body weight and the ground reaction forces. So the anterior shear or translation of the vertebra is resisted by the impact of the inferior zygapophyseal facet of the cranial vertebra against the superior zygapophyseal facet of the subjacent or caudal vertebra. So this effectiveness of the zygapophyseal joint to provide the resistance in the anterior translation, which depends on the extent to which the caudal vertebra superior facet which lies in the frontal plane and the face posteriorly. So this is what it occurs when it go for lordotic curve, it will slide anteriorly. And now I am going to discuss about the sacral region. Sacral region vertebrae are fused to form the triangular or wedge-shaped structure. It is called as sacrum. You can see the sacrum here. The base of the triangle, which is formed of the first sacral vertebra, supports two articular facets that face posteriorly for the articulation with the inferior facet of the fifth lumbar vertebra. I will show you. See the first sacral vertebra, which will give an orientation or give articulation with the fifth lumbar vertebra. The apex of the triangle is formed by the fifth sacral vertebra, which articulates with the coccyx. You'll be able to see here. It is articulated with the coccyx, and the lateral part of the sacrum or ala bears an auricular surface that articulates with the ilium. So you'll learn when you are coming to the hip, the chapter hip. The ala also bears a sacral tuberosity that is posterior to the auricular surface and articulate with the iliac tuberosity that is also with the hip. So now you will be able to see a orientation with the hip. See the both the side hip, it is getting attached. So the sacroiliac joint are weight bearing, which compounds joint consists of anterior synovial joint between the auricular surface of the sacrum and ilium and the posterior syndesmosis between the tuberosities of the same bones. So the role of the sacroiliac joint appears to be to relieve the stress on the pelvic ring imparted by the movement of the trunk and the lower limb muscle contraction, the weight of the body and the ground reaction forces. The joint must allow the movement to absorb twisting forces ascending from the lower limb, yet be stable enough to transmit the force from the vertebral column descending to the lower limb. So now you will be able to see a proper view. So just see the sacrum over here. Even though it is fused, see you will be able to see few holes. It is just to pass our spinal cord. So our body is made in such a way that it's beautifully created with no defects. So the spinal nerve will be coming through the other vertebra, and when it comes to a sacrum, it is going through these holes and it will be transferred to the lower limb. So role of physiotherapist when we are treating patient, of for example when you are treating a low back patient, is to make sure the soft tissues or any other muscle structure should not be tight or taut enough. So the muscles will be having a minimum tightness or whatever is required for the particular area. If it is becoming more tight, exactly compression will occur to the lumbar area as well as the sacral area. So whenever you are going to treat a patient, just make sure the soft tissue surrounded by these bones should be free enough. If it is not free, there are more chances it can even compresses the vertebra or even the spine, or not spine, the spinal nerve, then the radiating pain will occur. Next is the articulating surface on the ilia. The articulating surface of the ilia are covered by the hyaline cartilage. Although the hyaline of the ilia contains a denser aggregate of collagen fiber than that of the sacrum and is less than 1 millimeter in thickness. So the articular surface of the ilia are also multiplanar and curvy to match those of the sacrum. The fetal and pre-pubertal articular faces of the ilia are flat and smooth. So while the post-pubertal surface develop a central ridge that extend the length of the articulating surface and corresponds to the grooves on the sacral articulating surfaces. And last point, the tuberosity of the ilia is an irregular bony surface that is posterior and superior to the auricular surface that articulates with the tuberosity of the sacrum via sacroiliac interosseous ligament. There are some points that you have to read several times to make sure it should be there, it should reach on your head. Otherwise, it will be really difficult to understand some concepts. Now we are going to discuss about the sacroiliac ligaments. So anterior, interosseous and posterior sacroiliac ligaments are directly associated with the sacroiliac joints. There are three: anterior, interosseous and posterior. A separate portion of the posterior sacroiliac ligament is called as either the long posterior sacroiliac ligament or long dorsal sacroiliac ligament, and the another one is iliolumbar ligament that we had discussed when we are talking about the lumbar area. So these sacroiliac ligaments are reinforced by this fibrous expansion from the quadratus lumborum, erecta spinae, gluteus maximus and gluteus minimus, piriformis and iliac muscles, which means almost all the lateral and posterior structures of the lower back. The facial support is greater posteriorly than anteriorly because more muscles are located posteriorly. So this point also I had explained when we were discussing about the thoracic and lumbar region. More structure will be aligned in the posterior area. That I can give you another example. When we are standing properly, our anti-gravity muscle, that is a posterior muscle, have to control or stabilize our body. So that can be one of the reason why the facial support is greater over the posterior surface than anterior surface. So these anterior sacroiliac ligaments are considered to be capsular ligament because of their intimate connection to the anterior inferior margin of the joint capsules. According to Bogdak, the anterior sacroiliac ligaments cover the anterior aspect of the sacroiliac joint and join the ilia to the sacrum. So these are the ligaments where you will be able to see L1 spinous process is there. This is the iliolumbar ligament that we had discussed in the last class, and the posterior sacroiliac ligaments, it will be oriented like this, and the sacrospinous ligaments. See here you will be able to see the coccyx, and this is the introitious sacroiliac ligaments. The long posterior sacroiliac ligament have superior attachment to the posterior superior iliac spine and adjacent part of the ilium. See here, ilium, it is the posterior sacroiliac ligament is getting connected with the ilium. So inferiorly, the ligaments are attached to the lateral crest of the third and fourth sacral segments. The medial fibers which are connected to the deep lamina of the posterior layer of the thoracolumbar fascia and the aponeurosis of the erecta spinae. The sacrospinous ligament which connects the ischial spine to the lateral border of the sacrum and coccyx. The sacrotuberous ligaments which connect the ischial tuberosity to the posterior spine at ilia and the lateral sacrum and even the coccyx. So symphysis pubic articulation, I think we can discuss this in the next class. So if you have any doubts, you can get back and ask me. I can tell you the answers. Thank you.